Hi everybody and welcome to a new video. Now this one is about cell shading and I'll explain a bit more later. But what you want to do is get your reference image, go have a look at the shadows, the midtones and the highlights. Go for the shadows. You want to make them extremely obvious. You don't want to make them too dark, you don't want to make them too faded. You want to make them as bright as you possibly can. And that's because if you make them too faded, it washes the image out and you can't see them. But if you make them bright, they're way more obvious, and this helps you in the beginning when you're learning cel shading. Next thing, go to your highlights. Make them also very bright, but make them a completely different colour. By the end of this, your image is going to look terrible, but don't worry. Really, honestly, don't worry. This is the entire point. This is just to help you learn. Once you're done with those, your midtones aren't too much of a hassle, but just make sure they don't blend in with the others. I've made them sort of a orangey-ish colour, which clashes terribly with the rest of the image, but that's what you're going to work with. Now, once you've got that, this is your basis, and you're going to use this to help you shade properly. So these are my lines based on that image. I want you to overlay them so that they're easily visible and so that the shadows come through. Yes, I did copy this pretty much directly, but that's because it's a learning tool. I want you to lower the opacity on your reference image. So the colours are still visible. This is why you went for the bright colours. Underneath your line art, I want you to make a new layer. And we're going to go for a medium to dark brown, or at least I did on this one. You can go for any colour, but I decided to go easy. Medium to dark brown. Make sure you're using a brush tool, not a pencil tool or anything that gives texture, because we want clean lines. That's the key to cel shading. And then you just start filling in the purple bits in my case. With cel shading, it will give your work a more illustrated look. It's not really for realistic detailing. It's purely for animation, easy stuff like that. I say easy. Clean lines, anything that isn't too much of sort of, well, like I said, realism, it doesn't really work. But illustration and cartoons, it's pretty much perfect for. You'll see it in The Simpsons, you'll see it in Disney films. And what I'm doing here, I'm just going around and all the bright purple bits that you can see, I'm just filling those in, not directly, but roughly, with my medium dark brown. Now once I've finished this leg and a bit of the stomach, we're going to go into a speed paint because nobody wants to sit here for the, how long was it? About 20 minutes it took me to do this. Nobody wants to sit here for that long. I'll be nice to you guys. So yeah, it's just a simple case of, there are quicker ways of doing this, but I just couldn't think properly when I was filming it, if I'm honest with you. There are quicker ways, but this way is quite easy, quite simple, and it's a visual indicator for you. So if you are one of those people who learns visually, and if you're an artist and you're watching this, you probably are, then this is the most helpful way to illustrate what cel shading is and how to do it and where the shadows fall. It's not particularly easy to find out otherwise. With a lot of trial and error you can, but using a reference, easily the best way for you to do this. Right, so we're nearly there. Just going to finish off this leg, and then we will move straight into a speed paint about now. So you might have noticed that I didn't follow all of the purple bits as much as I could have done. And that's because it's just easier. So this one now, I've gone for the lighter brown and I'm just doing these sort of darker-ish orangey bits. And I want you to go down in the comments below and tell me what mistake I just made on this picture. Because I did make one. And I didn't notice until later on. So if you do know, tell me. Let me know. See how good your eyes are. And if you don't know, just wait. So that mistake I made, can you spot it now? Yep, I didn't actually fully colour in underneath the darkest areas, which means that I've got a horrible line going right the way through half my shading. It's not ideal. So at this point, I was thinking, what have I done and how do I fix it? Because I don't usually do this kind of cel shading. I'll show you the one I do normally later on in the video. So I thought, right, well, what options have I got? I go in and I start cleaning up the lines to make them nice and sharp. Meanwhile, thinking about, how do I fix this horrible line? So I got two options. I can erase the dark bits, or I can colour all the way over it again with the base colour. So I tried erasing the dark bits, but as you can see, that just looks messy. It looks terrible, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know what I was thinking trying to erase it. It just didn't work. So in the end, I just decided to colour over it. Now this is my preferred method of cel shading. The other one was kind of a multi-tone type of thing, which was easiest with a reference image. But then you can simplify it even further. Just pick the darkest colour you can that isn't black, and I'll explain that in a different video. And this is more sort of the Disney Simpson-y way. It's a flat one shade type of shading. It's not multi-toned, it's not particularly detailed. And it's just a case of going where the light isn't going to shine, which in my case is usually always the bottom of the animal or person, and just drawing in a solid block of colour that you can then use on a multiply layer and just sort of play with the opacity until you think it's done. And that's basically my 2 tips to cel shading. Is you can either do a multi-tone, in which case use a reference image, make sure that the shadows on it are extremely visible, make sure the mid-tones visible and highlights. Once you've mastered that, you can kind of move on to the single tone simplified version, because this one's really hard to explain, if I'm honest with you guys. But yeah, pretty much cel shading is not as detailed. It's for illustrations, really, and not realism. It can work with realism, I'm sure. Someone point me to a picture down in the comments below. Show me your best realism that uses cel shading. You see it a lot in anime. So anime, illustration, Disney cartoons, Simpsons, Family Guy, in recent series at least. And it's a very good introduction to how shading works. So I generally put mine on about between 20 to 30% opacity. Again, you clean up the edges, make sure they're nice and sharp because that's a hallmark of cel shading. Make sure there aren't any stray bits of shading that shouldn't be there. And you will be left with something that looks quite nice, quite cartoony. Obviously, I draw in a Disney inspired style, so this looks a lot like Disney, I hope. Let me know, I might be entirely wrong. But basically, just clean up the lines, and there we go. You're left with that nice little animal there.